So I'm going to talk to you about Mobile ID. Mobile ID is a multi-operator API service solution that we've launched here in France. Sorry, I've gone a bit too fast there. Why did we launch Mobile ID? Because there's been an online revolution over the last few years, as everyone's well aware. Our lives are increasingly moving online, whether it comes to making a doctor's appointment, paying your taxes, enrolling your kids in school, or booking a holiday. You don't do it any other way than online now. What does that mean? It means that we've moved from, in 2020, one digital interaction every 3 minutes, to in 2025, we'll be looking at something like 18 digital interactions every 18 seconds. That's really a huge increase. If we look at the market here in France, it's 2.14 billion online transactions per year in 2021. That's a big increase, 16% increase on 2020. And about 77% of those digital transactions are being made from the mobile phone at the moment. So what does this online digital revolution have as a consequence? Well, the unforeseen consequence was a big increase in online fraud and identity theft. And we've got some examples here on the left-hand side, come from the French press, examples of fraud and identity theft in particular that have occurred over the last few months or years in France. 80% of French companies say they've experienced at least one attempted fraud this year. 1% of digital transactions are attempted fraud. We have about 47% of online fraud is linked to account takers, so that's somebody who will pirate your digital credentials and take over your account and make transactions or impersonate you. There have been some famous examples of Jack Dorsey and others had their, I think that one's mentioned there, have had their account taken over. And we have an increase in 44% in the number of cases of digital identity theft in France. So it's really becoming an issue that is increasing and is a big challenge for the online retailers. So how online retailers and service providers are reacting to this? It's a big challenge for them, and I think you can resume the challenge in three different ways. The first is, how do you verify your customer? At the beginning of his online journey, in the middle of his online journey, during his online journey, how do you secure sensitive transactions? How do you secure their data? And how do you protect them from identity fraud? Those are the three challenges that online retailers and service providers are facing at the moment. And it was to meet that challenge that here in France we came up with the idea of Mobile ID. Mobile ID is a multi-operator initiative in France. So Orange joined forces with SFR and Bouygues Telecom, who are the two other major operators here in France. Our idea was we have a lot of customer data, a huge amount of customer data, and we weren't necessarily using it to an awful lot. If we can make that data available to third parties to allow them to fight fraud, and we'd also be actually protecting our customers, then why wouldn't we do that? So we worked together, and I think that was what is unique about France, because there are similar APIs in other countries. What was unique about the situation in France is that we worked together to develop the APIs, so that it's based on GSMA standards, but we developed them to similar specs so that it's easier for our third-party partners to use. So 3 of us working on it together. Free is the 4th operator here in France, are working on developing the APIs. They haven't got them ready yet, but we hope they're going to join us soon. So if we look at some of the key stats, we've got, so as I said, the 3 main French mobile operators. That covers 58 million mobile lines here in France. We cover about 90% of the consumer market. And our data availability is about 95% for most of the key attributes. So we have 35 different attributes. I'll go into a bit more detail about them in a minute. So Mobile ID is a suite of 5 APIs, which can be used independently, it can be used together, as whatever suits the customer. And I'll explain each one of them one by one. If we start with, these are assets, sorry. The different attributes that we provide are, for example, the customer's surname, customer's first name, the postal address, the telephone number, the mobile phone number, the fixed number. Some people still have fixed numbers in France. Date of birth, title, the SIM activation date. We can also provide the customer bill, so the mobile bill or the internet bill. And we're working also on providing more data according to what our partners and what our customers would like us to provide for them. That gives you an example of the kind of thing that we can provide. And I'll show you how that works in situation. So one of the first APIs that we launched is called Match ID. What does Match ID do? It allows a service provider or an online retailer to check the data that their customers have provided them with the data that we, Orange, have in our customer database. Now, how could that be used? For example, it could be used when somebody's creating an account. If you want to make sure that the person creating the account is not a fraudster, he's not trying to impersonate someone, then you will ask them to fill in their information. We use the mobile phone number as the identifier, and we'll then match that information to the information that the service provider has. And if there's a big difference, well, that's a red flag. It's a bit strange. They don't have the same customer details as Orange does. So typically the API response will provide a whole range of different attributes that you can choose, but it will typically provide title, name, first name, date of birth, email, and contact mobile number, and it can also provide some of the other attributes that I listed previously. So this kind of API, this API is used typically to prevent identity theft. It can also be used to enrich customer databases as well. Now, a second API is called Home Verify, and this is quite a French concept in France, as I found out. So I'm British. I've been living in France for the last 20 years. The French use a proof of residence all the time. You're always having to produce a utilities bill when you enroll your kids in school. When you want to do anything, you have to produce a utilities bill. And it was actually a major pain point because you're always having to upload it, scan it, send it by the post, whatever. And it's a bit of a pain. So we came up with this idea, which produces a digital version of the Orange bill, the utilities bill, phone bill. So either the mobile bill or the fixed line internet bill. We can either produce it in a digital format or we can provide it as raw data in certain cases. And that, with just one click, can be seamlessly integrated into the customer's onboarding experience into the enrollment process. And I'll show you an example of how it's done with Orange Bank in a couple of minutes. So it's a great API because it allows two things. It really takes that pain point out of the customer journey when you're trying to create an account or you're trying to get some kind of service and you have to upload your proof of residence. That was a big issue for many of the online retailers. If you want to sell an expensive TV to someone, for example, you have to check proof of residence to make sure that they're not going to fraud you. And it also prevents the risk of somebody actually forging that document. Very easy to forge a document, particularly if you're scanning it or you're photocopying it. So if the document comes from Orange, clearly it's not going to be a forged document. So our third API is called SIM Verify. This one fights against SIM swap fraud. For those who don't know what SIM swap fraud is, it's the fraudster who manages to make a change in the SIM card. So it usually works by somebody, the fraudster, getting hold of your credentials, your telco credentials, logging onto your account and requesting a change to the SIM card, a new SIM card, and then intercepting that SIM card or changing the address on your customer profile, for example. Sometimes it can be done by actually getting around the controls that the operators have and persuading somebody in a point of sale to change the SIM card. They've got various ways of doing it. It's fortunately quite rare, but when it happens, it's very catastrophic because it means that somebody really takes control of your whole account. They can approve your transactions, credit card transactions, by approving the one-time passwords. So it's used, it can be very useful for protecting against fraud, payment fraud in particular, and also for account takeover, checking that the person who's connecting to the account actually has not made not had a change in their SIM card in the last couple of days. So typically the API will provide an answer to a simple question, which is, has there been an activation of the mobile line or a change of SIM card in the last X hours, and the service provider can choose that number of hours. So it can be a few hours or a few days, whatever they want it to be. Number Verify, this is an alternative to the SMS one-time password, so it will basically just tell you in real time that the number that the person is using is actually the number the person has declared is actually the one they're using. So it's typically used, as you often have used many times, the one-time password, SMS one-time password, when you want to create an Uber account or a Twitter account or whatever. It can be quite easy to fraud. Fraudsters are very good at getting people to transfer that code. They'll create a game on Instagram or something like that and say, you're going to receive a code, just send it to me. But if you send it to them, they'll then use it to create an account in your name or maybe to change the credentials in your account. Number Verify makes that impossible because we will automatically authenticate the mobile line directly through the operator's network. And our last API, which is actually not linked to fraud, but I just stuck it up there as well, is automatic form fill. So that will allow a smoother onboarding process for online retailers. So with the click of a button, a customer can fill in their details directly into the website or onto the mobile phone application with the information that's in the Orange account. So we're happy to use our data to protect our customers, but we're very careful about who we give our data to and for what purpose we give it to them. So we perform checks on the partners that we work with. The other thing that we do is to have two different types of user journeys. They can split into user journeys that concern or use cases which concern fraud. These are based on legitimate interest. And in that case, we don't require customer consent. So it makes for a very smooth customer journey. The use cases which do require customer consent, those that are not fraudulent use cases, for example, which would be more filling in your account details, for example, those will require a customer consent page, which is provided by Orange, so we collect the customer consent. We also, of course, authenticate the customer's mobile line each time. All this is based on the mobile customers. So either we have an explicit authentication process where we use a one-time password or an Orange login, or we have we call an implicit authentication process whereby it's the mobile network that will authenticate the mobile line. So it's secured on our side as well. And here are a couple of examples. I'll just stand here; it's easier. A couple of examples of our customer journey. This one is an example of Match ID. So Match ID was checking the verification where you check your customer's information against the Orange database customer information. As you see here, the customer will fill in on the left-hand side. They'll fill in their details. It's probably not the clearest slide because it's not been filled in, but the details are filled in by the customer. You will call our API. We will check if the details that the customer has filled in actually correspond to the details that we have in our customer base, and we will tell you, yes, the match is good, 70%, 80%, whatever. In which case you can then go ahead and approve the customer's account creation. So that's the seamless version. If we're in a version whereby it's done with consent, we're not based on legitimate interest, as I said, it's not a fraud use case. In that case, you'll have an Orange screen which will come in between the two, in which we ask the customer to give his consent for transferring that data to you, the service provider. And this is the version whereby if the customer's not connected to the mobile network, in that case we have a one-time password, SMS one-time password. So a few words from our customers. Our first customer was actually Orange Bank. We believe in testing our solutions internally before we actually market them outside Orange. And Orange Bank has been using two of our APIs for the last 4 years. I'll give you a bit more detail about that in a minute. We've got Secura, a great company who work in mobile intelligence, and they provide anti-theft, anti-identity theft and security solutions to companies all over Europe. And we've got an example from Floa Bank. Floa Bank, for those who don't know, Floa Bank, they are a French bank who are specialized in consumer credit. They came to us with a really interesting use case, which was customers who were going onto a website, a well-known website in France. They would click on an ad to visit a flat that was being rented at an incredibly good price. They'd go and visit the flat. There was somebody there to meet them. Flat's great price. I'll take it. Please send all your documents to us. They'd send their documents, copy of their ID, copy of their phone bill, copy of their salary bulletin, so on, of their pay sheets, paychecks, and then that person would use that information to pirate their identity, and they would go to a bank like Floa, and they would take out a loan in that person's name, and so the victim would be contacted by Floa Bank a couple of months later. Can you please pay back the loan of 50,000 euros that you took out last month? Which they never heard of. So they use our solution to try and prevent that happening by checking that the credentials that the customer, that the credentials that the customer has provided actually correspond to the credentials that we, Orange, have in our database. This is an example from Orange Bank. As I said, they were the first to test our APIs. They used our APIs on the customer onboarding process, on the enrolling process for creating a new bank account. They had two issues. The first issue was making sure that improving their transformation rate. Customers had to fill in a whole lot of information about themselves, their name, their address, and so on. So they used our form fill API to do that, and that actually improved their transformation rate by 3 points. Their other pain point was the one I referred to earlier, was the Home Verify, was providing the proof of residence, which is a regulatory obligation here in France, if you want to create a new bank account. And so we provided the Home Verify, the Orange customer bill, in a digital format, and that had a really great effect. It reduced the customers actually abandoning the online account enrollment process, that they reduced it by 50%. So they're still using it 4 or 5 years later. And here are some further use cases which came from our partner, our internal partner, Orange Business Services. Now, I'm afraid I can't give the names of the companies, but they are all real companies. But obviously, fraud is quite a sensitive subject, and they didn't want their logos up there being associated with fraud. One of them is a major French high street bank. The use case here was to secure a sensitive online operation, such as, for example, I want to add a new person, a new beneficiary for bank transfers to my online account. Obviously, if someone's got hold of your bank details, they could fraudulently set up transfers to somebody you didn't want them to go to. So they use SIM Verify to check that there's been no change in the customer's SIM card over the last 48 hours before that happens. The benefits there are eliminating identity theft through SIM swap and also protecting their existing customers, reducing their costs chasing up fraud. Second customer use case is an insurance company in France. They wanted to prevent they wanted to secure the change of customers' phone numbers. When a customer goes on to the self-care and they change their phone number, you want to make sure it's not somebody who, again, has pirated your customer's credentials and has changed the phone number to their phone number. So they use two of our APIs. They use SIM Verify to check there hasn't been a SIM swap, and then they use Match ID to check that the new phone number, that the customer information that Orange has in their database linked to that phone number is the same as the customer information that they have in their database. And if it's not, well, that's a red flag that it's a fraudster trying to do something. So that helps them protect their customer data, protects identity theft, and also reduces their costs fighting fraud. And the third case, very different, is online gaming. It was a regulatory obligation, which we didn't necessarily identify originally, so it's an interesting use case, to help them fulfill the regulatory obligation and also to simplify the online account creation process. They use Home Verify, which allows them to obtain the customer's telco bill in just 2 clicks. So that's an obligation to provide the proof of residence if you run online gaming in France, and that was something they could do easily and quickly, similar to Orange Bank, without losing their customers along the online enrollment process. So they improved their conversion rate by 3%, and also it helps improve the quality of data, helps prevent fraud by customers using forged customer bills, utility bills. Okay, 1 minute left. We have a demonstration if you'd like to come by the Orange stand, which is just at the back of the hall there. There's a live demonstration and you can see how it works for yourself. If you've got an Orange number, you can actually test your own number, see if it works. It has to be a consumer number, clearly, not a business number. It won't work otherwise. And some of our partners, just to mention of our channel partners, DQ Software, Orange Business Services, Secura, Telesign and others, Twilio, who work with us. We don't actually provide these APIs directly to online retailers. We go through our channel partners who are connected to all of the different mobile operators in France. And they aggregate the data and provide those connectors. And that's it. Thank you very much. Orange developer website. If you want to know more, the address is up there.
Thank you very much, Amelia. Any questions? Yes, sir. Oh, big steps.
Hello. When did you realize that you could valorize the wealth of data that Orange has for external partners? Is it recent? Is it what was the process that made you realize you had such treasure inside of your company?
We realized we had data. We actually had some banks come to us and say, we'd like to investigate these use cases. Can you provide data to us? I think that made us realize the value of the data, which probably we might not have done quite so quickly if they hadn't done that. So that was about 6 or 7 years ago, and the time that we actually got the APIs developed, we tested them, we changed them because they didn't work that well to start with. We improved them. Took us a few years. But these APIs are also, similar versions are available in many different countries in Europe. France was one of the first countries, but the first was actually the UK. I think you can have them, they're available also in Belgium, in Germany, in Spain. So you get similar versions.